Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Alchemy Lab. You meet in a tavern today. My name is Matt. I am your alchemist this evening, and I'm here with a returning guest. I'm here with the wonderful Leslie Sheu for episode 20. Hello, Leslie.
Hello. I'm very happy to be back.
Yes.
Well, Thank you for having me back.
Well, you're most welcome for coming back. And yes, you're back because on episode 20, our 20th one, and it's an event. It's somewhat of an event because you have a new book out and I'm about to have a new book out, and we're going to go ahead and talk about them. But before we do, Leslie, there is a chance that people watching don't know who you are. So for those people, who are you and what do you do?
Let's see. So I'm a front-end web developer by day. I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm going to give a shout out to those two guys. And on the side, when I can find the time, I write and publish a fantasy series called Kumasagi. And the fourth book just came out like almost 2 weeks ago now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now I'm going to leave us small so we can see everything. There we are. Yep. Let's move us down here. Move us all the way down here. There we are. And there it is. There is the Kumasagi series as it stands.
Yep. There's all four of them. Cinderpot is the fourth one. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. And I guess it's the one where Asta actually does stuff.
She's been doing things.
So that was a lot of fun. That one turned out a lot longer than the other ones. Actually, I can actually, yeah, in a minute I'll show you the comparison of the paperbacks. But that one was really when I think things started to click. Some things are coming together in the story, I guess. That ended up making it a bit longer, I think, because I don't know. You've read them, so I'm terrible at describing them.
I have read them. Well, so I've read all four. They're all very good. And the author page on Amazon is up here on the top right. Easy link to go and get them because they are very good. Cinderpat is, I think, the best one so far. It does appeal to me specifically because I really like the stuff. I really like tension, and I really like a bit of mystery, and I like very kind of rich characters, and I like very formidable and menacing villains, and it's got all of them in spades. And I like, obviously, the Asta, who is one of the, I would say, she's one of the three central characters in the series. Would you say Jayan is? I'm putting them as Najat, Jayan, and Asta.
I think it's two central characters. Maybe Jayan as well. He certainly has.
His role in Kandagiri is so big. I sort of put him a bit further. But he's in that.
Yeah.
Sort of, if he's not a central character, he's like nipping at their heels, kind of.
Yeah, that book actually doesn't even include Najat and Asta, like, hardly at all. Najat makes an appearance, but Asta isn't even in that book. But so that is mostly about Jayan, I guess. Yeah, I'd say I don't feel like we're following him. We're more following his effect on those two, I would say. Even in Kandagiri, I'd say like Kadir and Charu, or maybe a little more.
Oh, well, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, Charu definitely.
Yeah.
And again, it's sort of the effect that Jayan has on Charu And potentially the effect he has on Padir. He's a bit of an enabler for Padir
They're very much alike. They're very
in
much alike.
Kandagiri.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Then maybe he's not a central character, but he has such a big effect. It's hard not to see him as a central character in it.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, the original artwork I did for the books a long time ago myself, like that, I just use this kind of promotional now. Features it. I don't have it handy. It's like over there in the corner, but it features just their arms to like show off the scale. So the top part is Asta's arm, the bottom, the middle is Jayan, and the bottom is Najat. So probably back then I was thinking him as more of a, like, I don't really want to call it a love triangle, but you know, he's sort of between them kind of thing.
It has been referred to as a love triangle. I think I mentally have referred to it as a love triangle at times.
Yeah, I kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. I probably realized it's coming across that way. And so just for people who don't know, well, oh my gosh.
Yeah, now I put you on the spot of having to describe your own work, which is a spot I hate being put on.
Yeah. I mean, she basically, Asta is married to Jan, but they're not really in love,
right?
And there's
Cinderpat is I would say Cinderpat is also, I would say it really puts a nail in the coffin of the idea of it being a love triangle, I think. It makes it very, very clear that it's not.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, I think she's stuck in a position. So Asta was born yesterday. Like, for people who also don't know, this character like was born out of came out of a pod in a lake.
Yeah, I think you've been on before, and we sort of briefly went over what's going on in the Kumasagi world in terms of the mechanics of it. But as sort of a brief overview, what would be the sort of, what's the situation? What is their world?
Okay, so their world is that they live in. It's a different planet from ours. I would almost say, like, you could consider it part of our universe even, but you know, it's so far removed that I'm just calling it fantasy. So it's this kind of species of humanoids that they're the whole oh my gosh. So there's a sacred lake, multiple sacred lakes, where sort of a plant life grows with these pods, and there's these female bodies that grow inside the pods under the water. And then there is a sort of extra dimensional being called the skyfish. That's one name for it. That sort of gives them a spark of life. It comes in across in the sky at certain times and drops what would be called a Shakti. It falls down to the, they're called destins when they're still in the pod, I guess, or actually even after they're born.
Before they have like their, before they kind of become, not sentient, but I guess sort of before they kind of develop their personality.
Yeah,
it's a bit like they're a bit like a child. A destin is sort of the female child in this.
Yeah, and actually they don't even have like, so the trigger would be the sort of spirit Shakti merges with the body, which causes the pod to break open, and you know, fully grown woman comes out. She is completely not cognizant. Like, she doesn't have this is another part of the situation, is they need a holy woman called an Amala to kind of mind meld with them to give them intelligence and cognizance and stuff. First, they have to be pulled out of the lake by divers, which Najat was one at one point. In fact, he was there when Asta was born. Which is, I don't want to give that part away because that's in the first book, and that's sort of when things start going down.
Yeah. Well, certain people can they need the mystics in order to kind of, because the newborns operate on instinct, kind of.
Yeah, they want to mind meld with someone.
Yeah. They want to latch
really
on
dangerous.
they want to latch on and mind meld with someone. So you need these mystics who can shield the divers who are trying to stop them drowning.
So the divers are the mystics. They shield themselves.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so they have the ability to kind of empty their minds so that no one, not a Dustin or whoever, it's almost like you become invisible, like that there's nothing mentally to latch onto, right? So it takes a lot of practice, meditation, a lot of spiritual practice to be able to do that.
Yeah. And for those who've watched Doctor Who, it's a bit like the perception filter. It's like they're still there, but they're not. But other people aren't necessarily aware that they're there.
Yeah. Oh, if Amy was watching, she could talk about that, I'm sure. That's
for you, Amy.
I just want to mention, I just love the guests you've been having on the show. Like, I was really glad to see Amy and Molly B. And these are authors, I've read their work and really enjoyed it. Timothy Dempsey, just really excited to see some of the people you've had on since I was on long ago. So
well, you alert me to some of these authors, like Timothy Dempsey, like you alerted me to, and I was like, this book sounds interesting. Oh, this book is good. Let's get him on.
Yeah, I love that. We should talk about that sometime. I mean, I love Wilting Blood, and he's going to have a new one as well. He's working on a second one. I'll take credit for him, and I'll take credit for
Amy as well.
Yeah, it reminded you her books came out, so and you reached out to Molly on your own, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. Like, and then Meisner.
Oh yeah, Adam
Meisner. Like, I will take credit for that one as well. So I was like, D&D author, like, yeah, let's get these two together. So I'm sorry, that was a huge segue.
Just to continue the segue, I just did a podcast with him and Aragmar, which is a bit more D&D focused. That's
fun.
I didn't do that. It was Adam who did that. So look out for that.
Yeah, he has a show too.
Yeah. I don't know where it's going to go up. Maybe YouTube. I don't know, but keep an eye out for that. But returning to Kumasagi.
I know. Sorry.
Stop distracting me.
My whole point.
From you talking about your own work.
I might be good at that. My whole point is that Asta is she's a woman, but she was born she was born recently, and it's like, okay, you're given cognition by, well, the situation is there was I don't want to give too much away, but she should have been initiated by an Amala named Teeb. There's a bit of things happen, and she runs into Najat instead, and this, the dangerous thing happens of them mind melding, and he's not an Amala, and so then they end up with this kind of bond, and the Amala tries to fix that, and maybe it's not fixed as much as you would think and stuff. But yeah, so I think the original point I was trying to make is she ends up, because she's having dreams of this man that she doesn't really remember them having this accidental mind meld. So, and this is kind of horrible, but these women are sold, as wives. So, and she ends up being sold to his brother, and she thinks it's him, and that sort of thing. This is like giving too much away. But by the time you get to my whole point, let me just come back to my point before I totally segue again. She's like, okay, I'm married. She does find out, obviously it's not the right guy, but it's like well, you know, I'm supposed to be married. This is just what they do. That's what we do in the society or whatever. And she's trying to make the best of it. And Jayan is not husband material. And he was looking for a wife for the wrong reasons. And that's all revealed. I won't give that away.
Yeah.
So by the fourth book, I think it should be pretty obvious that Match is not. I don't.
Well, we haven't been told explicitly yet precisely what he's running from in the books. There's a lot of inference we can make, but as yet we don't know for sure what he's running from. But he is running from something. Now, the 4 books thus far. So Destin introduces the world, introduces your principal characters, sets up the situation, sets up this not really a love triangle, but sets up this sort of Shakespearean situation of mistaken identity, but not in a funny way.
Right.
In a sort of, well, it sets up a situation. And Kandagiri follows Jayan more. So Kandagiri being the second follows Jayan a bit more on a specific journey that he's going on with his friend. We talked about Kandagiri in the last show. Check that out. We talked about it in a lot more detail, but there's giant murder birds involved.
Yep.
And then we have Wife, which is book 3, and that is following Asta a lot more and following Najat a lot more. And you delving a bit more into that marriage between Jayan and Asta. And then in book 4 is where we are now, and they're going to meet. So how much can I reveal? Oh, probably nothing. I don't want to.
No, you can.
I don't want to spoil much.
I'll just say you can spoil. You can spoil some, because I just want readers to. You know, it might interest some people who wouldn't.
Well, so the
otherwise
for reasons, they are going to. So Jayan and Asta. Jayan is taking Asta to his home island where he was born and where Najat was born. For sort of training reasons, but also for Asta to meet their father. And there are hints. Najat and Jayan's father. There are hints especially in book 3, that is a complicated situation and a potentially dangerous situation. And that is where we are with Cinderpat. So we're in that situation in Cinderpat. And focusing in on Cinderpat without again, it's in a book series, it's difficult to talk about it without spoiling it and what came before, because people definitely should read these books. They are very good. They are very, very good. It moves at a real clip. Like you've set up. The island is fleshed out really well. So it's where we are on Cinderpat Island. It's very different from everywhere else we've seen in the world so far. And you're seeing it through an outsider's eyes, through Asta's eyes. It's very well set up. The people's attitudes to her are very well fleshed out. And of course, we have the father, who is a very, very complicated man and he's an excellent Hitchcockian villain. And I really enjoyed. I'm a big fan of Hitchcock, and I really enjoyed how tense it was, because we know he's dangerous, and Asta knows he's dangerous, but he's not projecting that yet. when they first meet, but you're waiting for it to happen, and it's like a creeping terror of like, okay, when's he going to do something? Because we don't know what he's done as the readers. We don't know what he's done, and then we don't necessarily know his potential, and then we see some stuff. I don't know.
Oh my
you'll have
gosh.
to find out. But it's an excellent, and it's the pacing is it's a lot quicker in pace, I think, than the other ones.
Mm, mm, mm. It has an arc, like I think definitely has a more of an arc. Yeah, I think it was interesting because Dylan, the father, he's another kind of obsessed character, but he's a recluse, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something like their mother died, and he's just completely obsessed with her, and that's part of what's driving. And there's the whole thing about the afterlife, and that people, and that was explored in the third book a little bit. We get to see Tiban and Najat's sort of that's a whole complicated thing, the Mahasari music, but his teacher teaching him how to guide the souls to the skyfish, and like if you die in a bad state, that you can get stuck trailing this, you won't merge back with the skyfish, you might get stuck kind of this limbo, freezing cold place in space, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think I tried to tie that in a bit with Dylan. He wants to see his wife again, because they actually, and I'll just spoil this, they are one of the only people who have been able to kind of cheat the whole cycle of being merged back in with the skyfish, which basically you're gonna lose your memories and stuff, right? You may come out as a Shakti again later, but it's sort of like you've come with some that Shakti will have some of the abilities and experience, but not necessarily memories of past life. And they were so obsessed with each other that they found a way to cheat that and come back lifetime after lifetime. And there's things like that. So,
well, that's something I think you get into in an earlier book. I think it's mentioned that their love for each other is sort of legendary.
Yeah.
In this society, not just on Cinderpat, but all over. It's a legendary affection for each other, and they found each other again and again.
Yeah, he found her, he knew when she was going to be born, and found the island and stuff. So there's this sort of what would you call it, this romantic view of this guy, but everyone who lives on the island knows he's not necessarily someone you want to poke with a stick or something. He's just reclusive, and they're if as long as you leave him alone, everything will be okay. And that's kind of their attitude. And Asta coming, and he senses her connection to Najat, and that just sets him off because he hates Najat, and that's the whole thing that's revealed.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah. That's sort of what triggers. And not to mention there's also something going on with the island.
True.
And so that's sort of her thing, is she's kind of got this calling, the spiritual calling to go there, and not quite sure what it is. And then and that was tricky because the island has a problem, and she shows up, and how do you make that this outsider coming in, and she's not really a Mary Sue type, right? She's very naive. She's naive. She was born yesterday, but she's got some gumption, and she's got this fire of wanting to figure out why she's feeling that the island is trying to tell her something. And because the island had a destined pool where women were born, but it has been damaged, and all that. So that's a part of that part of the story too. But the people who live there are just don't mess with Dylan, just leave him alone, because he did terrible things and they let it happen. So like, but he's pretty powerful, and I don't know, it's a whole thing, but
it is a whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that I really enjoyed writing that, though. A lot of things came out, a lot of the characters. Charu's in it, he has a bigger role. He was introduced in the second book, but he has a very big role in this book, and
Yes.
as a really good friend to Asta. And she kind of needed that, I think. So you know.
Yeah, he's really he really comes into his own in this one. Yeah. Because he's in Kandagiri. He's a student in Kandagiri. He's sort of inquisitive, and he's sort of looking for. It seems like he's trying to kind of find his place, and he's trying to kind of. He's looking up to Padir and to Jayan a bit, like he wants to have his. Because they're amphibious, because they're not amphibious, but they're good swimmers, so they have webs. They have webbed fingers and toes.
Yeah.
But Jayan, because he's an explorer and he uses hands a lot, he had his webs cut.
And Padir too,
and Padir too. People. Yeah, and Jayan and then Charu is, I think, thinking about it in Kandagiri. I don't think he has it done in Kandagiri.
No, I think in the third book he had it. Now the reason he has it done is because he's a crafter. He like builds things, and he has scars all over, and his parents are like, you got to get that fixed, and like there's basically cosmetic surgeons who will make it look perfect again and stuff. And he comes kind of like a rich. His father was an inventor. This isn't early in the books. His father was an inventor and like helped invent. Like there's a lot of so these people kind of live in a dry place, even though they're an amphibious species. They have to rely on the rivers, like for the water and stuff. And there's a lot of like, piping systems, canals. Like they have to get the water where it needs to go and stuff. And his father was one who like invented like piping systems and like all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's a total aside. But
it speaks to something that I do want to ask you about, actually. I want you to kind of expound on a bit, because it's something I admire a lot in Kumasagi. It is a very, very rich world, and it's very culturally rich. There's a lot of. It's hard to describe. It's very kind of. There's a lot of cultural flavor to it. You get a clear idea of how these people live, how they live as a people, and how they live in their separate societies. So how long did it take you to draw that up, and how long did it take to develop that? The sort of cultural world building.
It might have happened while I was writing it. I think we talked about last time how a lot of the things I came up with, I had to solve problems that the story presented, right?
Yeah.
So then you're like, how do okay, these women, there's only male children, like how does that work and stuff. So, and then you just start having to, you want certain things to happen with your characters, so you have to solve that, okay, their environment, how does that work? And I've been working on this story for a really long time, so to ask me like how long it took, I was also writing it during that time, so you know what I mean. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know how the society down in Kandagiri operated, living so close to the Lopperbeaks, right, until I got there, and then I had to figure that out, and so it's not like I came up with a world first. I'd say I think some of it just came out. It was a little more character driven, and then I just started getting ideas So yeah, that's hard. I don't know if I'm answering that very well.
So basically, from the word go, from conception, it was something that was sort of in your mind, kind of problem. So how do they do this? Well, they do it this way. Okay, well that's spun out to these 4 things. How do they do these 4 things? Okay, well that's spun out again. So how do we do that kind of thing?
Like, for example, the skyfish, which is also called the Aidina. I wanted Najat to have this profession or this role as someone who guides someone who's dying or died, sorry, needs to guide them as they're dying and help them calm their mind and stuff. And then I was like, well, why is that important? Why is that? And I got some of that from Tibetan Buddhism and stuff. And that concept that you should be in a calm state when you die, and why is that important? So in this world, it's important because if you don't let go of attachments and stuff, you can get stuck in this, not. So he helps get stuck in the tail of the skyfish. I think we've talked about that before.
We may have, yeah.
Yeah, basically. Well, there's one scene that's really important to me is in the 3rd book when he goes and kind of has to, he actually goes into the tail, which you're not supposed to do, to find this one ghost back there who was kind of like he felt attached to, and he ends up having a vision of how that guy died. And so I really wanted to show his so just the concept of I was like, well, why does he need to guide people? And then it just turned into this whole, your mind, just the gears start turning, and then it became the concept of the tail of the fish with these ghosts are stuck back there. And by the way, the skyfish is basically living in the outer atmosphere, almost space, around the planet. And so I don't know, I think it's just I had to answer some whys, and then when you do that, it just kind of your head, all those ideas. I mean, you're a writer and you've created worlds for tabletop, right? So I think maybe how it just starts not exploding, that's the wrong word, expanding in your mind, and things start falling into place. And
well, one of the things that makes it unique is, at least in fantasy terms, at least in Western fantasy terms, I guess, is how non-Western it feels. And it gives me, I mean, as someone who's lived in Asia before for extended periods, I was finding it so familiar in certain ways, of certain elements of kind of Japanese culture and Chinese culture,
Indian culture,
Indian, and I've not lived in India, but and you just mentioned Tibetan Buddhism. So I'm just guessing that they were a massive influence, or at least some influence.
Yeah, the way they I mean, I'd done a lot of studying of Tibetan Buddhism, and I traveled to India and Nepal for that reason, to the settlements there, and just seeing both of those cultures. Well, there's really there's Hindus and Buddhists living all together and stuff. But also I read a ton of Japanese manga, so some of that culture is just kind of embedded in my mind, the way they sit they may not use chairs, but sit at a low table to eat, or and in my book, many Indians eat with their hands, and so the characters eat with their hands. And so I just really, for some reason, I wanted to give that aspect to it. But then there's some Arkansan, good old American, they eat crawdads, which I call, mountain lobsters. So, there's some things in there that are from my culture too, I would say.
Right.
So, but the the blessing cords from the Amalas, that's something, I received blessing cords in I went to teachings, I was able to go to teaching, like a 3-week teaching by the Dalai Lama in India. And like, so, and just meeting, being able to go to pujas and things like that and receiving those blessing cords. And there's like I don't know, I don't want to get too much into it, but I do try to like kind of convey the spirituality of that and what that means. And like, Charu wears his blessing cords, and the character Nania has like so many blessing cords that they've turned pink over time, like
right.
And I saw people like that. I saw nuns and monks who would have just all these blessing cords that they've received over the years, and they fade over time, but it's like it means something. There's a connection there from and the I don't know if I mentioned, but the blessing cord comes from a spiritual teacher, a spiritual master. They're like, they've either held it in their hands and then it's given to you by someone else, or they actually give it to you themselves if you're lucky enough to have an audience, that sort of thing. So those are just little tidbits I wanted to keep in there, sort of, or put in there, I should say, just to kind of like give myself that connection to the things I was able to experience there. So
right.
Anyway,
well, it's because now that you've said, like, now that you've mentioned that thing with the Dalai Lama, it made a thing go off in my head with the Mahasagi, and I guess with the Kumasagi is this kind of holy figure that's at the moment. Well, no, yeah, it is this holy figure that is split into two people in the world. The soul is between two people.
Yeah, Mahasagi Taban, who's like the older one, when he at a certain when Najat was born, that like basically there's like the one, and then when the younger one is born, it splits, and it kind of like it's a double incarnation at that point. So Najat is like, so they're sharing that, and that's causing some friction. I mean, and this has been going on for like centuries or thousands of years, I don't know, where they're this cycle of like, and then once the Mahasagi dies, it's absorbed into the Kumasagi and he becomes the Mahasagi. And I'm thinking, and I think like, I wonder if any of the Kumasagi, because Najat's starting to have difficulties with that concept of having to share a soul with someone, having to share an identity almost with someone, like that gives you questions about your own identity. And like, did any previous Mahasagis and Kumasagis have the issue with this? And, so that might be explored more in the 5th book.
There's the way they want to do things, the way they want to achieve, because they both, they're there to kind of guide, or to bless people and to help guide the dead and the dying to peace. But they have different ways that they want to do that. And it's sort of there's the way it's in Teban's case, it's the way I guess the way he was taught to do it and the way it's been done. But then there's this other way that is maybe a little more dangerous, but it seems to get a better result, or it seems to get a result with someone maybe who could be too far gone. So it's
Najat's method,
right. So there's potential. They kind of butting heads just a little bit, and there's more stuff as well that will have them potentially butting heads. But you just mentioned a 5th book there, potentially. Well, say potentially, there'll be a 5th book. But how many do you think there'll be?
There's a planned 7.
Okay.
7.
Right.
Hopefully, though, the next 3 will be much shorter than Cinderpot. I'll just show, if anyone like wants to look at this screen, like this is the difference between Cinderpot and the other ones. And Candid Gator is really short, like pretty short. it doesn't involve Najat and Asta as much. It's kind of a journey adventure, but it's the shortest one. This one is a little bit meatier, I think, which I didn't realize when I was writing it. But.
No, I was gonna say, well, the next ones will be shorter. Is something I've said in the past of my own work, and it has not happened that way at all. So,
that might be a good segue to your work, actually.
It might be.
Unless you have any other things you want to say about.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna switch over, there's only a couple more things really. So the first is more of a statement. These are very good books, and they are. It's a very, very rich world, and it's very immersive, and I definitely recommend checking them out. The second thing I would say is this you're going to the so there's a thing happening right soon.
Yeah, Comic-Con. Are you talking about the Comic-Con?
Yes, I'm talking about that.
Yeah. So so I live in the Baltimore DC area in the United States, and there's a comic convention called AwesomeCon in Washington DC, and I don't know when this video will be shown, but it's June 16th through 18th. That weekend I will have my very first table at a comic book convention as a author. I've been to many a con behind helping someone else's table, and I've been to many a con as a attendee. I mean, I love comic book conventions. They're just so fun. So I enjoy going to, there's one in Baltimore called Baltimore Comic-Con. There's one in DC called AwesomeCon, and I've been attending those for years. But this is the first time I'll have my own table. I'm trying to sell my books.
Right. And, so how many days is it?
3.
3 days, and you'll be there for all 3 days?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I was just checking when this would go up.
Yeah. So
it won't go up on the Saturday because for the same reasons the Amy one went up on Friday. This one will go up probably on the Friday.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So as we speak, as you listen, Leslie will be there.
Yes.
At the con. So yeah, there will be books. There will be books.
There will be me like babbling embarrassedly about trying to explain what it is, why you should read them. And I have a very good friend who's going with me that I just want to give a shout out to her. She's actually the one who proofreads my books as well. And she's my neighbor and friend, Lisa, and she will be there all 3 days with me at the table, and I think that's really helpful. So I'm really happy she's gonna go with me, because you kind of need someone else there, to just take breaks. And I think it's almost this first time going to be just a support, just having her support is going to mean a lot. So, but I'm also doing Baltimore Comic-Con in the fall as well. So,
oh, okay, nice.
We'll see how it goes.
All right, fantastic. Well, with that there, go meet Leslie if you're there, if you're cool.
Yes, please do.
But with that said, let's go ahead and jump on that segue.
Okay. So the last time we talked, which was your episode 6, right?
It was episode 6.
Yeah, that's right. Which, if
still,
anyone
still the most viewed.
Tavern. Might be a fluke, but we'll see. Yeah, if anyone goes back and if you go back and listen to that episode, you can witness the exact moment that I found out that Matt Waterhouse is a walking Star Trek encyclopedia.
Yes.
I had no idea. And I was like, oh, this episode of TNG influenced me. And you're like, is it the episode with Famke Jensen in it? And I was like, yes. Like, how did you know that? Oh my
I
god.
didn't know the title, but I knew Famke Janssen was in it. Yeah.
Yeah. That was awesome. So
The title is The Perfect Mate. I know now. But
yeah. Yeah. So when we talked last time, I had read your science fiction books. So I'd read The Eye of the Universe and Red Saint. Just totally love The Eye of the Universe. You can go to that episode and listen to me say why I love it. And I really enjoyed our discussion about that and getting some of your, thoughts on your process, and like, because you had changed some things, and that's just really interesting to talk about.
Well, I enjoyed it too, because it was a different. I didn't expect. I didn't expect it at all, but it was nice to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Because I always forget to talk about my own work on these. I'm a bit better about it now, but a lot of the time I just forget.
Well, if you thought I was excited about that book, I am really excited about The Four Guardians, which I have recently read, which is your fantasy book series. In fact, I got to take a drink of water before I start.
Okay.
So yeah, so I just want to say, like, so back in it was back in November of last year, which is, I don't know how many months ago now, but I was really anticipating this book by another author, indie author, because I had read his first book and stuff, and I bought it right when it first came out. I ordered the paperback. See, it makes these really nice. I'm not going to say who it is yet, but because I don't want to say what into that. But I had ordered his book, and it was in November. It had just come out like day one, and it was on its way from Amazon. And I was like, that night, I was like, I don't have anything. I'm just going to take a look at my Kindle, and I like those sci-fi books by Matt Waterhouse, but I wonder what he can do with fantasy. And like, I had Out of the Ashes, your first book, on my Kindle, and I opened it up and I started reading the prologue, and I got hooked immediately. And then it was so, and oh man, I actually forgot to ask you before we started this what I can spoil as far as
okay.
Who, oh crud, because there's certain things.
Hang on, we're just gonna confer.
Okay.
Hold that thought. Okay, we have conferred. So continue.
Because I'd like to describe a little bit about it for your listeners who may not have read it or even know that you wrote a fantasy series. It's 4 books. They are chunky. So they're I found them totally worth it. I mean, like I said, I got sucked into the prologue. So the prologue is really good. It's like you're in the midst of a battle of the capital of a country called Hama. And tell me if I pronounce anything wrong.
So far, so good.
Melita City is the capital, yeah. And so you're introduced to these 4 characters right away during the battle. And like, one is Tobias Calver. He's like the leader of the Rangers, and they're battling. So the battle is happening because there's this country, a neighboring country across the dividing sea, right, called Kale, who is being consumed by a desert that is just kind of consuming their country. So they need more food and things like that, and resources, and so they've invaded their neighbor Hama. So this is the big, there's been things going on before that, but like, this is one of the major battles. And so Tobias,
this is the invasion. Yeah,
this is the invasion. Yeah. And there's just this great line, like, the city had, I don't know the exact line, but I'll just paraphrase it. But like, the city had withstood like so many attacks, right? Even centuries of attacks, until they brought a dragon. And that was one of the lines that got me hooked. And then you see the dragon, and the Kalish have brought a dragon to the Melita City is like a walled city where the Hamans are, and the Kalish are invading outside, and the dragon just like lays waste, like it's breathing fire, and anything in its path is incinerated. And like it's like, oh, this is like a big deal. Like this is going to turn the tide, obviously.
Yeah. By walled city, we mean like walls that are probably hundreds of feet high. Like they are proper. It's a bit like the city wall of Xi'an, which is but bigger than that. But that's like a very, very big wall that goes in a box around a bunch of the city.
But they can't withstand this dragon.
No,
unfortunately.
I don't think that wall could either. No.
These dragons are really formidable. Like, even the dragon fire can keep burning. Like it's just, oh man. So but that battle, so it introduces him, Tobias Calver, and three of his rangers. There's a bunch of them, but the three principal ones: Ember, who's an archer, and I guess she's also sort of a tracker scout, right?
Yeah.
Type of character, as we see later. So she's an archer. She's in the middle of the battle. Just, she can do wonders against the people they're battling, but no one's going to be able to battle that dragon. There's Thomas, who's a mage. So this is kind of, this whole thing starts out kind of traditionally fantasy. You've got the mage, you can do magic, you've got an archer, tracker. There's the fourth character is named Basai. He's a wyvern-born descendant from a dragon, and so he's got like a tail. His wings, he would have wings, but they've been cut, and there's just there is, each one of these four characters has, like, Ember is from a tree dwelling of people called the Orlan. Thomas is from Kale. He was a slave there, so he's actually Kalish, but so it's like you learn through the four books, even early on, but maybe the first two or three, but there's backstory that's woven in for each of these characters and how they came to be in the Rangers, and because they're from different places, right? And how they are just really close with Tobias. And
well, in that first book, they're almost sort of the classic 4-person D&D party. So you've got like the sort of, I mean, the fighter / paladin would be Tobias Calver, who is he's sort of he's the head that turns he's the sort of leader of this band. And you've got Ember, who is sort of the ranger. Yeah, she would be the ranger. She would be, she wouldn't be a rogue. She'd be a ranger. Like plinking from range. And then you've got Thomas, who would be a wizard or sorcerer character. And then you've got Basai, who would be probably like a barbarian of sorts. But he's not. In the way he acts, he would kind of be the barbarian. And he's like his sort of, his people are more tribal, and he's the only non-human of that 4. Well, in the prologue, he's the only non-human of that 4. He's the sort of reptilian kind of lizard-like, sort of a bit like he's a wyvern-born. It's a bit like a sort of D&D dragonborn.
Right. So I think the prologue does a really good job of introducing them. I think it's important to introduce them there, because the prologue ends with the dragon is upon them and the fire is coming down, and Tobias is like diving for cover. And that's how that ends. And then chapter 1, this is where it starts to get really like, chapter 1, he wakes up, Tobias wakes up, and he's not human anymore. He's in a shack in the middle of nowhere. He is takes him a while to figure it out, but he is made of metal now. He's like a giant 8 foot tall, I'd say. basically walking suit of armor. He wakes up, doesn't have a lot of his memories. There's two people in the room with them who have been searching for him, a woman and someone who looks like a mage. You find out that's Ember and Thomas. Sorry, sometimes I get Thomas and Tobias. Like,
yeah.
Just wait till we get to the names that start with K.
Yeah,
I won't get that.
There's a lot of them.
But so chapter 1 is like, oh gosh, what's going on? Why is Tobias not Tobias anymore? And just he's trying to figure out who these people are, and they know who he is, kind of, but they've also, I don't want to give that. They've been searching for him, and so the one thing that really got me too, that because I got to cover a lot, but and I'll have questions for you, specific questions for you, but I'm just trying to give your listeners like a sense of why I got sucked into this story. And one of those things that really started sucking me in is, so eventually, and it's really nice how it happens, but he takes on the moniker Ironclad, this large walking suit of armor. I mean, it's Tobias though. That's part of the whole thing throughout the books, is it's still Tobias, or is, his identity. There's all these questions about his identity and stuff right now. And so he's been brought back. I mean, you figure out he died in that battle and has been brought back to life in this form, right? And so the first book is them trying to figure out, how that happened and things like that. But the second chapter, because he's with them now, Ember and Thomas kind of barely remembers them, feels some kinship with them, like some kind of feeling. I think I kind of got that. Yeah. But still kind of everything's kind of cautious the way they're treating each other and stuff. But there's a scene where he's in the inn alone in his own room, and he wants to find out what's inside that armor. And he literally, and it's painful, he can feel pain. And like if he can be wounded, like steam and oil will leak out, right? If he gets shot and stuff like that. And there's just amazing scene right at the end of chapter 2 where I'm not going to reveal too much, but he literally, I don't remember even how he does it, but he managed to break open like his chest plate and wrench it open and see what is inside of him. I think there's a mirror or something. And that what is inside of him was just such a huge, like, guttural, like, oh my gosh, that's in there, and what are the implications of that? I'm not going to say what it is. You got to read it. It's just an amazing scene. It's revealed to the reader. And I was just, that was a moment. There's so many moments in these books that got this emotional reaction from me, or shocked reaction, or like, there's a lot of good punchy moments in throughout this series, I think. But that was the first big punch, I think, for me. It was like, holy shit, like that, what is inside him? And then the next chapter, he's like at a smithy, and he's just like kicked the smith out, and he's like putting his own chest back together with the smithing tools and stuff, which is kind of funny. But so that was a huge, I started getting sucked in. That, like, that book is in 2 parts. They're trying to figure out, I think, are they looking for Messiah too, or do they just stumble? I think they're looking for him as well.
They're looking for him, yeah.
Yeah. So part of it too is there's this legend of the 4 guardians, which just basically describes them.
Yeah.
And so there's, oh gosh, there's so much to I'm already getting off. So they are the 4 guardians, let's just put it that way. But
yeah, they find this out a bit later on.
Yeah. So they go to they get mixed up with a clan. There's the clans, oh my gosh. There's so much there's so many things that happen that sucked me in, but I can't reveal. But there's this character Mora who's a mage.
Mm.
Oh my gosh. So I'm not gonna like describe this whole story, but I'll try to describe like why again. The first book, they find out a lot of things that they need to find out, and by the end, they've unfortunately run up against Mora and triggered some her anger and stuff, which sets off a huge part of the book.
The series as a whole.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say how that happens, but she is after them after that, and it's an unfortunate thing that happens. They didn't really mean to, but it's something unfortunate that happened. So that she's their adversary among other people, and that book ends like they kind of know what they're, because they've met the people that brought Tobias back to life. You find out. I mean, we just talked about what we can reveal, but I'm still kind of hesitant.
I would say this is the reveal that you're sort of approaching. It's like the halfway point of book one, and
can I just?
Well, I don't necessarily mind. I don't mind because it's four very big books, and I don't mind that being revealed.
Okay.
Yeah,
because I think it speaks to Ember and Tobias and Tobias Ironclad. So it's revealed to them. They find there's a white tower that's really important. They get there. They find out.
That's the thing that they've been instructed to do, is find the white tower.
And they picked up Basai along the way, which is a whole wonderful thing. I really liked how, I don't want to get into that. He, that was a struggle to bring him back in the fold, which is how Mora gets involved in stuff, which is really great. So they make it to the White Tower. Mora and her and the clan are after them. Oh gosh, there's Idra. Oh man, that's in the second part.
Idra comes later.
Yeah. Let's get to the big reveal, which we decided we can kind of spoil.
Yeah.
So it turns out that Ironclad wasn't the only one brought back to life. Well, it turns out that it's been 100 years since that battle at Melita City. And so then that brings into question, how are Ember and Basai and Thomas still alive and looking like they did? Well, they've been brought back to life too. And so, and one of their people who they knew, who's still alive but totally ancient, Rowan, who's at the White Tower, has some answers about that. What I really liked is, I think it's in the first half, because they're in the tower, has this like room of clarity where Ironclad goes in, and that's where the memories come back of the battle. And so you get the story of the battle, and that really important battle at Melita City. Excellent. It kind of reminded me of Attack on Titan, because they're like having to run across rooftops and stuff. And one of them, has to face down the dragon, and they're trying to get people, all the innocent people out of the city and distract the dragon. And I don't want to give too much away. It's just a beautiful, I'm so glad we got to go back and see that, because it was such a big, important battle and stuff. And it gets told, that part of the story gets told in this flashback, and kind of like multiple flashbacks leading up to that.
Yeah, he starts to remember more.
Yeah,
as they go.
And the room of clarity, I think both he and Ember go in there. She leaps him after him or something. That's when you find out they have a history together romantically. And so, or maybe you knew that before.
A little before that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's becoming more clear to the reader in both of them. And that's one of my favorite aspects of this whole series, is their relationship. And it's just, that's where some of the emotional stuff comes in. The second part is we meet Idra, who's a necromancer. She is an amazing character. Maybe not so much in the first book. I was just kind of because they have to get something from her.
Yeah.
And in order to Yeah. Oh, and then there's the airships. Oh my gosh.
There's a
The-
lot going on. Yeah. There's
and
a
that's
lot
something I
going
wanted
on.
to get to. That's something I wanted to get to.
Yeah, okay.
Because okay, so the Kalish have this guy Vinnick who's coming to. Okay, now they know where the White Tower is, and they want to come destroy it because it's kind of there's this resistance against the Kalish. Yes, it's been 100 years, but the Kalish haven't managed to take over all of Hama.
They won the war effectively, and they do have basically they have control of the country, but they are not unopposed in their control of the country.
Yeah, so there's pockets of resistance. They want to crush those people. There's more I want to get into in a minute, but in the burning plains and stuff. What was I? Oh, so just a very important character is introduced named Idra. At this point, they just need to get something from her. She has a ghoul army, like because she the thing they need to get from her is corrupting her, and she's a necromancer, and it gets out of control. So there's this whole concept of if people around her die, they just immediately reanimate into ghouls, like right.
They're zombies.
Yeah, zombie.
They're zombies, but with sort of they're almost like a directed swarm of zombies.
And I don't think they were very much directed in this book, but oh boy, are they in the
maybe at some point, who knows? But yeah, I mean, it may sound to people like you're going over quite a lot of stuff in the book. This is the first book, but you are quite skillfully there dancing across the surface. Okay. And not delving into not delving into the meat, which is nice.
Yeah, what I want to and I have a plan about how, because I do want to. Okay, just let me. I have to get it all out. I have to get it all out, no, without spoiling anything, right? Because I do have a specific question,
please.
But small segue. The Deadland stories on your Substack, which are also about zombies, which are amazing because and as with Idra later on in the series, there's this. The Deadland stories are, just go check them out because there's it's zombies but with a real emotional. It's basically a boy and his father living in a zombie apocalypse and trying to anyway. They have to live with his. Yeah.
Let me get there real quick.
They have to live with his mother, who's a zombie, and these are short stories, little short stories. I mean, dinner time is just it broke my heart because the son is he's on the verge of breaking down, and the father's like, we have to hold it together to survive, and just the mom is there, but she's like, so. My whole point was that this is I think it's almost like an interesting take on zombie stories having more of a an emotion. There's some emotional stuff where it's repulsive, but there's someone you love who is doing repulsive things or is now so just very interesting. I just want to mention that because Idra has zombie. She's controlling zombies.
I like zombies as a as a horror creation a lot. They're I don't know what I think it was Shaun of the Dead. I think that's the first thing that I saw.
I love that movie so much.
Yeah, well, I was 14 when it came out, and I was too young to watch it, but I remember I got in anyway because I looked older. And from that, I went on a tear through. I watched all the Romero movies, up to I think Land of the Dead. And when I've watched them recently, they just hit different. It's I was talking about things earlier with Lee, off camera completely, but while we were coming back from Carl's, and we were talking about music and how it hits differently. Like I was talking about Johnny Cash "Hurt" and how I used to listen to that as a teenager, and I really liked it. I was like, this is a really good song. I just really like this song. And when I listen to it now, the effect is completely different because I've lived a bit more, and what's going on with that song affects me more nowadays. And it's the same with the George Romero, particularly those first two, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, Dawn. And how they kind of, particularly Dawn. I think Dawn, when I watched it as a kid, I liked it because it was just like fun zombie. Yeah, we're living in a mall and we're killing zombies and it's fun. And now I watch it and I'm just like, oh gosh, you're trapped. Like you're living in this luxury, kind of, in this mall, and you're making something of it, but you're stuck there. You're completely stuck there and you're still vulnerable there. And the idea that the dead retain a little bit is something that I really, that's something that's more a Deadland thing than a
because
than in the Four Guardians.
The mom is like, concerned about what her son is going to eat or not, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
well, in the first one of those, which is Good Student, it's the kid at school.
Yeah.
And all of the other students are dead. All of the other students are zombies.
He has to pretend, and he has to eat the same thing they eat, which is dead bodies.
He's having to, he basically has to act normal, because if he doesn't act the way they act, they're going to realize that he's not a zombie. So they're going to he'll then be the next meal in the cafeteria. And
there's so much tension because of that. There's so much tension in those stories, and they're so short. They're really good. Because any wrong move, and they're gonna, like, all heads will turn to you, and like, now you're the next meal, like you said. And the dad is trying to convince him to keep up this charade.
Yeah, you have to keep going to school, because if you don't, and you're seen outside school, they'll know that they'll know that something's wrong. And
the kid is like, I don't want to eat more meat.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far from the Four Guardians though.
Yeah. Well, the ghouls in the Four Guardians, that might be a holdover of Shaun of the Dead. Are there any zombies out there? Don't say that. Don't say the Z word. Why? Because it's ridiculous. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to call them ghouls.
Ghouls, okay.
Ghouls, but they're the undead or the dead. They are zombies. But the thing with them is a sort of popular, it's a sort of a trope that you got to shoot them in the head. And that will put them, you have to remove the head or destroy the brain. So that's like one of the first things they try. And I was like, let's have that not work.
Yeah.
And then, that was in my head first. I was like, let's have that not work. And similar to, I think, the way you have kind of gone about things with Kumasagi, you have the thing and you go, okay, why? That's something I wanted. I was like, okay, have it shot in the head with an arrow, and you think that's it, but it's not. Okay. Now what do we do? Yeah. Because apparently we can't.
Oh no, they don't. You can't really bring him down.
Yeah.
There's only one person that can bring him down.
Right. Well, in the first book, there's a clear parameter and reason, and a clear boundary of why you can't bring them down. And it might come up again. Who knows? In the next books in the series, but well, I know, and you know, Leslie, that I don't know. They might know.
Let me just. Okay, I'm gonna try to get through why I kept reading this series. because the first one is like it kind of it's a good arc. It ends. They understand who they are, what their purpose is. They need to help the resistance against Kale. That's sort of their purpose now. The resistance, some of them, like they basically, worship them, and not worship them, but are glad they're back. Some of them don't believe this is the Four Guardians. Some of them are like, oh my God, they're back. This is great.
Yeah, because what they did has passed into legend.
Yeah.
And it's become a big kind of cultural fix. It's like a fixed cultural point, that battle of Melida City, when they do what they do. It's become an inspiration, and it's become a fixed thing, and
which
a very influential thing.
At first they're like not sure they can live up to it, but it's kind of
well, they're faced with the reality of it pretty quickly in the Burning Plains.
The Burning Plains is oh man. So there's a epilogue in the first book where is just great, where you see like the Kale-ish are terrorizing someone, and I won't give too much away, but you kind of see how far Ironclad and the Four Guardians have come in their understanding of what they are and what the purpose is. The prologue of the Burning Plains, which is book 2, which I had taken a break after reading the first one because I was finishing up writing Cinderpot, my 4th book. You were writing Empire at the same time.
Yep.
We were both writing our 4th books at the same time. Yours, Empire, is the finale of the Four Guardians. So it's a little different for me, but so I'd taken a break, but as soon, like I think it was the day after I finished my first draft of Cinderpot, and that was in March. I actually wrote it down, March 25th. And you had actually finished Empire like 12 hours earlier or something, which was really funny. I started reading The Burning Plains the next day, and the prologue of that is the epilogue of the previous book, but from someone else's point of view, someone we hadn't met yet, and that was really cool. And I was like, oh, we're starting right where we left off. And The Burning Plains is when it splits into like 4 different stories. Not 4 different stories, 4 concurrent things happening, because you've got people have had to split off on different quests and things. And this is where it starts really getting interesting. I mean, it was interesting before, but this is where you actually start to see there's a character called Alessandra who's introduced, who is like the regent of she's Kalish. The Kalish have renamed Melida City Victory, which is like a kick in the pants, right? She's basically a princess of the Kalish royal family. She's the regent. She's learning kind of what's going on. This is where you learn that this and Serpents is where you learn, okay, there's the resistance and there's a Kalish, but the resistance is like, they've got some extremists, right? You especially learn this in Serpents. The 3rd book, which is called Into the Serpent's Lair. And that's when, and I'm skipping over so much stuff. In the Burning Plains, there's just some really emotional stuff that happens with Idra. There's the Burning Plains made me cry at the end because of what happens with Ember and Ironclad at the end. There's like multiple cliffhangers. This is where I'm going to start skipping over, but there's multiple cliffhangers in that book. The ending with Ironclad and Ember is like tears coming to my face, like and then the Serpent's Lair. So this is when, now I'm just going to give away that Thomas is sent on a mission. Can I give away what his mission is, kind of? The Mage Thomas.
Sure.
He okay, I won't give it away because I think he hesitated. But this is where you find out that the resistance has these extremists. They are like, if like if you're a citizen and you're not with the resistance, they will treat you like a counter-revolutionary and punish you. Like it's like you're a counter-revolutionary, you're not with us. Like this is the revolution, you gotta, and they will kill people. Like there's these farms that have the Kalish have come in and are learning with the like moving in to Haman farms and trying to learn how to farm and actually getting along with the farmers to a certain extent. And the resistance will come in and kill all those Kalish farmers, and like, and if the Haman farmers are like, you know, what do you do? They may kill them as well for being, what would you call that? A collaborator, right? So there is a lot of that interesting, like, you're like, oh, the resistance, which you thought were the good guys, some of them are good, some of them are, Thomas finds out on the Kalish side, there are good people as well who want to keep the peace. Alessandra, like, you're like, there's just like, there's now splitting up of this, like, it's not just the bad guys are Kalish, the good guys are Haman. Like there's bad and good guys on both sides, and like a lot of death and destruction. And then so, and serpent is when you really find that out. And so, and then, you know, Kalad, which is an interesting character who is a baddie, but at the same time, I think it was in the second book when you meet Alessandra, he's kind of, and Alessandra is obviously a very good person. She's naive at first, she's trying to figure things out, she wants to do good. She's thwarted because they're like, just, you're the princess, you know, get out of our way, because she has to work with this council, and like, and her royal parents who are a pain in the butt, they're up in Kale, but they come down and like are like, if she tries to help the city people, they're like, you have to stay in your room, you know, basically gets grounded. And Kalad is now, he's one of her allies in a way, and it's like this bad guy who suddenly, I started to like him, and that bothered me, and like, you know, and I won't get into that, but so that part is really interesting, this sort of like, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. And by the fourth book, which I got early access to, so happy, because I was reading them pretty fast, and I was like, you know, I'm reading these pretty fast, and you know, if you can I just and by then you had written, I think so, and so you let me read it. And one thing I want to talk about, because you know, I really want to get to things, is what I really like about this story is there's magic throughout. Like the mages can, you know, conjure lightning and force stuff, I don't know, like well, ice, you know, they can do all sorts of things, and they can enchant arrows and stuff like that. But there's also technology mixed. Like, you have the airships, which are introduced in the first book, which are, and they have these giant dragon heads. The whole dragon thing, oh my gosh, there's a whole history of how the Kalish were using the dragons, like they had brainwashed them, they were using enchantments on them to control them, but then they lost that ability, and it's revealed in the Burning Plains how they lost that ability, and they had to put the dragons down. And then there's the question, are there any dragons left? And there's so much I haven't gotten to that, you know, like a lot of things happen with Messiah and Ember that are important and tie into the dragons, and oh boy. So what was I going to say? Oh, the technology was really interesting. And I wanted to ask you, because in our conversations you had a name for that, because it's not I don't think it's not, what do you call
steampunk.
It's not steampunk, right? To me.
No, not to me either.
Magic, something like magic tech,
magic punk, I think I call
it. Or magic tech or something, because the airships there's 100 mage, like there's so many mages, and the whole thing, like the magic, there's certain limits to it. Like if you use it, it'll burn you up inside. You were talking about Amy this last episode. And so then you start getting, now they've got, so I think it's in Serpents, they're like, yeah, we have this thing, you can hold it in your hand and like it can shoot out, like there's all these mages that enchant these little stones. They enchant these little stones and you can put it in this device and it has a trigger and it's basically a pistol. And then by the end, like one of my favorite characters becomes a gunslinger, like and then even at the end there's like, they have what you're calling amplifiers, but it's like you hold it and it's got a long barrel and it's got the stones and you can shoot out, and it's like a rifle or a shotgun basically. So I just want to ask you, and I there's so much I haven't covered, especially what happens in Empire, that's so amazing, and like there's tragedy, there's emotion, like I'd be crying every now and then, like stuff that happens with the characters,
right?
But I wanted to just bring up that magic tech like aspect and ask you kind of, because you write sci-fi too, so I was thinking this is kind of sci-fi, it's not sci-fi, but like where did that come from, or where did you start getting the idea?
So it was the time skip that gave me that sort of, because they have that 100-year skip in time where you have, and when they're in the prologue, it's sword and sorcery and it's battling, and there's sort of fortifications and massive city walls that they've built with magic, essentially. Where they've gone, okay, we can get a bunch of mages together to use effectively telekinesis to bring these heavy blocks up and build this wall that is hundreds and hundreds of feet high. And I thought, if that's where they are at this point in 100 years, how is technology augmented with magic going to have evolved over the course of a century? And I was thinking, well, traveling, they're going to have found a way to augment vehicles to travel faster, and flight is the natural sort of progression of this, because they had ships, but ships can only go so fast because of wind and because of friction resistance in the water. So okay, well then they were probably gonna have found a way, and the ship is a good starting point for that. Have the thing, make it float, lighten it with incantations so the wind can affect it more, and so it can maybe move a little bit more swiftly and more maneuver and more it can like turn sharper and things like that. And it's just like, okay, this natural progression of stuff, how far is it going to go? And Kale is one of the forefronts of that. Like, they developed the first mage was Kalish ever. The first ever mage was Kalish. They developed a lot of the incantations. They developed a lot of they developed the airship technology first. They probably, I would say, they developed the sort of pistol / rifle amplifiers first. But you get a sort of a snapshot of other nations on Planar, which is the world of, particularly Moku, which is the sort of large continent spanning nation, which is very rich and very powerful. And they have things like monorails, and they have things that are sort of magically powered and things like that. It was just a case of natural progression, because these are humans at the end of the day, and humans are very, very adaptable, and they are very good at ingenuity. and they're very good at developing these things with the tools they have. And if one of the tools you have is magic, then the sky's kind of the limit. And unlike, I think there was a phrase from either Arthur C. Clarke or someone else. I can't remember who the other person was, but like the science and the difference between science and magic is that they're basically the same, but we can explain one. I'm probably butchering that. I don't know.
I don't know it either, but that sounds
yeah.
I
probably am butchering it. Like, I mean, if we went back now to the medieval times and we took out, I don't know if we had like, if you took a gun back to medieval times, you'd be an emperor probably by within a decade, I imagine, probably less, as long as you had enough ammunition. If you had only a clip, then you'd last 20 minutes.
Right.
But
because they even have like, oh, go ahead.
Because the magic within this series is magic. It's not, there's no science to it. It is just magic, and it comes from a place. It comes from somewhere.
Oh yes, I think that's hinted. Well, okay.
Well, we go into it in the first book, but it does. Some of it comes from, well, it comes from somewhere. So it's not a science thing. It is a magic thing. And yeah, it is, and it is the tool.
But then they're using technology to kind of funnel that, or use it to I guess project or channel it, right?
Yeah, well,
I mean, some of mages can like shoot it out of their hands or a staff as well, but these are like amplifying it.
Yeah, the staff.
There's cannons. Sorry, I just want to mention there's cannons that amplify it as well.
Yes.
So yeah.
So the point of the mages. I think you mentioned earlier, like, and I mentioned with Amy, that if you use it too much, it will just burn you out and you'll die, right? Because you're channeling this energy through you, and you are the channel for it. So it's going to play havoc with you, which is why they have staffs, because they can feed some of that into the staff, and the staff shoots it.
And then the Kalish may have gauntlets, right?
Yeah, they have like a gauntlet that can affect. Is that the
similar
purpose? Yeah. So yeah, it's the same purpose. And with the the idea with the guns, effectively, is that anyone can, because they charge up the stone. The stone is your ammo. You load it and you shoot. And any old munchkin can use any of these things, and then you run out, you just replace the stone, and then you're back to it.
Yep, that was a fascinating part for me. Is I'm like, we're not having a gun battle kind of on skiffs that are flying. Like, there's the smaller airships, and they have handheld cannon, like, or shoulder cannons. They've got, but then alongside them there are people shooting arrows.
Yes.
Which maybe also magically, like, the mage will come by and like imbue them with some magic, so the arrows can do. It's kind of like a hyper trick bow that someone we know.
Yes.
That I may want to mention.
A bit like that, yeah.
But yeah, so they have like hyper trick arrows that are magic. But at the same time, you've got guns as well. But it's not a gun like we would think of it with gunpowder or whatever.
Right.
Because in a kind of sci-fi way, they could shoot different things like lightning and ice and a force field, or I can't remember. I keep mangling that because it's like force something. Basically, it seems like it's just like a big punch of something. Like,
it's like a big. It's like it's almost like a punch of gravity, because they can do compressed air as well.
Yeah. Are there any others that I'm thinking? I see lightning and ice most.
Yeah, lightning, ice, fire.
Fire. Yeah.
force, which would be the sort
Yeah.
of gravity, compressed air.
Mhm.
Some other little sort of smaller ones.
Because there's a lot of battles in these books,
Yes.
which is a lot of fun. There's a lot of quiet moments with the emotional stuff that I really can't get into the story and the characters because that would be what happens with them.
Mm.
I think I would definitely recommend people pick this series up because that's a big part of it as well, is the characters. Because there are a lot of characters, but there's some they go
But
through. I can't say.
It's intentionally a very human story with like dealing with issues of kind of who am I, and
Yeah.
issues of like I love this person, but it's like I like issues of like I love this person, but this person has gone through something terrible, and is there still does that love still, has that love survived what's happened? And dealing with a part like dealing with difficult part. I mean, they all have difficult pasts. Thomas, well, Basai in particular, and but also taking it from a position from Alessandra, take from her, where she's in a position of, in theory, power and influence. So how can I channel that for something in her own sort of magic, in a sense? How can I channel that into something good? But also, because she starts off, when you're introduced to her, she's not likable. I didn't make her likable. She's like kind of a bitchy, bratty 19-year-old.
Yeah.
And then things
Spoiled
happen.
a little bit.
She only cares about her dresses and kind of teasing, and
she has I just wanted to say she has, and she's not a Buddha figure by any means, but she has a Gautama Buddha moment where he was like traditionally sheltered. He was a prince, sheltered, never saw the outside world, and then he somehow got outside and saw a sick person for the first time, saw a dead person for the first time. Something similar happens to Alessandra. That's kind of an eye opener, I think, to what's really going on in the world. Yeah, that was interesting. I think there's also themes of some of the characters have done some things that are absolutely terrible, whether they meant to or not. And how do you get past that? How do you have redemption? Can you even, so a couple of the characters, that's I think a big part of that as well. And then there's those touches of romance, not just with Ironclad and Ember, who it's very complicated. But I don't want to give anything away because it was very satisfying. I'm just going to say that part ended up very satisfying. There's some heartbreaking moments, but there's some really satisfying moments with that too. But they're not the only couple, and so I was shipping to some certain people pretty hard, and because the story,
a good number of those ships came in.
They did, and I was like, yeah. They did. One didn't, but I wasn't shipping that one. That was probably the least one, so I was okay with that.
Yeah.
But there were a couple where I'm like, if this doesn't happen, I'd be really disappointed. Yeah. And I think you talk with Adam Meisner how he likes to put a touch of romance in, and that's definitely in there. I really like that. That's a human aspect as well, right?
Yeah. It sounds almost redundant to say I like love in a story. In general, yeah. It's such a powerful force that is getting overlooked a little bit. these days, particularly in fiction. And it is something that I would like to see a lot more of.
Yeah, I always enjoy that. And I mean, I think you and I had talked about even like I was like, movies, I really like romance and fiction when I read just a touch or more, but the movies I like, there's not that much. And I was like, Aliens is my favorite movie, and then you pointed out that Hicks like gives Ripley like the tracker, and then they have, I already knew about the moment with, I mean, I love the moment where he teaches her how to use the big, I don't know what you call that thing, the big gun,
the pulse rifle.
The pulse rifle and things like that. So even that has a little touch, and it's just, it adds something,
It's just enough, yeah. It's just that little,
doesn't take away from the overall story theme.
It doesn't take away from either of the characters either. I think there is,
that can happen. So.
I think there is a modern idea that romance takes away from the characters, and I think that is very, very far from the truth of it.
Oh man, in the Four Guardians, it only enhances, I think, that, at least in that story.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
There was nothing that seemed forced, is what I'm gonna say. It's not like, oh, let's just give this character a love interest, kind of thing. So
well, it has to be natural. Yeah.
I
didn't want anyone to exist just to be like the girlfriend or the boyfriend of a character. Like they all have their own thing going on, and there's a lot of bloody characters. There's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. I don't know how you keep track of all of them.
Neither do I, but somehow, well, I managed it mostly.
Especially when you name half of them with the letter K.
Yes, yeah. I noticed
Helen,
that.
Cassius,
I don't know when I
Caitlin.
noticed that. Yeah, Kellard, Caitlin, Cassius, Kanku.
There's a bunch
more. There's probably more that I can't think of. Did I say Caitlin
just want
already?
To mention too, Cassius and Kellard are also. Can I give that away? What they are? I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna let that go because it's kind of cool how it, especially when you find out Kellard is the same thing as Cassius.
Right.
So I'll let that go. I'm just gonna leave that as a nugget of, you guys go read it and you'll find out. So
yep. That's a good nugget.
Yeah. There's so much that we didn't even discuss of what happens in Empire. Can't really discuss that at this point, but
it's not out yet.
No. I do want to mention this. You can't discuss this without mentioning there's the fantasy, there's the magic tech, there's also cosmic horror.
Yes, there is.
So just so potential readers know, that's a very big part of it and a very interesting part of it, I would say. And there's something out there that's causing some of this stuff to happen, and it's like
causing some chaos.
So just a really good, I would say the story has a really good blend of those things. It's not a cacophony of disparate like genres or anything. It's just that world really can handle all of those things together. So yeah, that's what I liked about that. I do want to get to something else as well.
Go on.
Before we if we can segue away from our books.
Sure.
For a minute. Actually, I need to close the door. Can I hop up and do that for a second? I'll be right back. Okay. Hello.
Okay.
Back.
Hello, back.
So there's something else that you are involved in that I am also a fan of. Which, how do I go about this? So obviously you have the Alchemy Lab, and Lee has created a role-playing toolkit, right?
Yep. It's created Alchemy.
Yeah, and you guys have your campaigns that you're doing, which I
Hmm.
think you're the what's it called now? It's not a dungeon master, it's a
The alchemist.
the alchemist. Yeah,
I'm the
that of course.
alchemist.
It's a card playing, yes, card playing based uh, role playing,
Yep.
tabletop role playing. Um, I have listened to some of them, but that's not the only one you're involved in.
It's not the
And
only
so
one.
the one that I really enjoy listening to, that I started listening to because I knew you were in it, but then I really got sucked in because all the other players are so excellent. But MSR Thadian has his Reborn in Power. Is the
Oh.
role playing game called Reborn in Power, or is it there's the new expanding universe and all that stuff? So
Yeah, so
yep.
the Reborn in Power is the name of the system, yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay.
this is the thing is the New Age.
Yeah, now I would say that the new age, there's also a new squad which comes before that.
Yes.
Is that like a prequel, or is new age a sequel? I feel like maybe
Yeah,
because
so the new
the
squad, I'm not
it's on
sure
the
where
podcast.
it's on
It's
the
on the
podcast.
podcast only. So
Yeah.
yeah, which I didn't
Yeah.
know. So yeah, I started listening to the new age first, and then I found out that there was a precursor to that, um, a campaign called the new squad, where your squad actually meets each other for the first time.
Yep.
And that's on Arthadian's podcast. It's really good. Um, and so this is a Reborn in Power is it's a it's not sci-fi, it's magic. It's no, sorry, space sci-fi. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would
The
say
word for it,
it's sort of space opera.
or magic? There's a
Definitely,
word for
definitely
it.
sci-fi.
It's definitely sci-fi based. Um, so I started listening to it, and it's a story. I really got sucked into the story, and I'm coming to it as someone who has not. Yeah, there you go.
Hmm. Yeah.
There you can find them all
So
here.
the New Age is there. The new squad is down a bit.
Yeah, it's probably
Yeah, it'll
way
be in
that
load
was
more.
back.
Yeah.
Um, so it takes place. Like I'm coming to it first of all as someone who doesn't play a tabletop role playing games. So more of just a listener, a fan, listening to the story of your campaign. You play a character called Marmaduke 9,
Yes.
and the other principals are Sai, who is a Sin, I think. So
Yep.
she's kind of like mostly a robotic character, but she sounds like she was formerly a human. So there's a lot of backstory with these characters that the listener
Hmm.
doesn't know the whole deal yet.
Yep.
Um, there's this, so that's played by Ash. There's a Liam who is also, so Marmaduke 9 and Liam are primes, which
Yes.
basically human, but I think Marmaduke 9 has some augmented.
They're like tech augmented humanoid
Yeah.
people.
And then there's a rock who is I forgot his species name. It's a
Reticon.
recticon, which is like also an 8 foot type
Yeah,
of
the
big alien. Um, which I love his delivery. He's just very stoic
Mm.
and like, and then I agree. It's like just very. Oh, and then I have to mention Arthadian himself, who is the lore master running
Hmm.
the game, or running the campaign. Sorry, like I'm gonna just mangle all the terminology, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, but oh, and then there's so Arthadian plays a lot of the characters. I mean, I'm sure people familiar
Yeah.
with RPGs would know that the lore
Yeah.
master does that.
He's
Um,
effectively the GM, yeah. So he's
yeah,
everybody. He's everybody and everything in the universe, except
and
for
he,
four people, which are played by the party.
yeah, and now there's been some added. Lee is in it now. Your
Yeah,
friend
he's been in it.
Lee,
Yeah.
he's been in it. He exploded onto the scene in that one episode. But what oh, what was I going to say? Oh, so Arthadian or MS Arthadian invented this role playing. like system, right?
Yeah.
So, and he's running the game, and he plays a lot of different characters, and he does voices, which are great. Oh man, he does, like, because there's the AI named Buddy, who is just really fun to listen to when he comes on the scene. He called, because Buddy, he's now in the body of a, he starts out as a little ball or something, but now he's in the body of a cabot, which is just hilarious. And but he calls everyone Buddy. So you've got a character called Buddy who's calling everyone else Buddy, and like, so, and just the voice that Arthadian does for that, and also like then he'll do a voice for like the sort of entity that's bothering a rock all the time and has like this maniacal laugh, and it just puts chills up my spine.
Yeah, his voice stuff is really good.
Really good. Yeah, makes it a lot of fun. But you also have a voice for Marmaduke 9. But
yes,
can you just, I have one specific question, but before that, how did that come about? Actually, I have 3 specific questions. Let's just try to get through those. First of all, how did it come about that you got involved in that? Like, did you know them before? Did you know Arthadian? Did you know the other players? Like, how did you get involved in that campaign?
How did I get in touch with Matt? I can't remember. I think it was through. I think it was probably through
you were on his podcast.
I was on his podcast. Yeah.
Was that before or after you joined?
That was before. Yeah. It was before. I think I got in touch with him through Parler and probably through Minds. I think me, myself, Lee, and Carl started the Alchemy Lab, and we were doing a lot of gaming stuff, and I got in touch with him through that, I think, because he was the second guest on Tavern. And I think I had met him before that. I'm pretty sure I'd met him before that.
And when was he? Do you want to join this particular, like, a new squad?
Well, he was. I think he was almost at the point where Reborn in Power could be kind of shown to people, and I think he'd seen a few of our videos, and I was like, "Hey, man, I'd be up for doing that if it's ready, if and when you're ready to go, I'd be happy to come on and help you, like, play test it or whatever." And yeah, I think we sort of carried on our separate sort of paths for a bit. And I feel like it was, I could be misremembering, I feel like it was after the Tavern that I did with him that sort of solidified into something where it's like, okay, you ready to go? Right, let's have a go. And I sort of learned the system a bit and built Marmaduke, and yeah, away we went. I hadn't met any of the other party.
Okay.
They were, I think, gaming together before on a different server. But yeah, I joined them, and yeah, we're still chugging away.
Yeah, still going. I mean, it's been a while, right? It's every 2 weeks, I think, an episode comes out.
Yeah, I mean, in total, we've done about. I mean, if we include the new squad, we've done a good almost 30 episodes.
Wow. Yeah. I definitely recommend listening to a new squad because it's when they meet, the party meets, and there's some adventurous stuff happening. Obviously the story is happening and stuff that I think is a good precursor to a new age, because by then they know each other. They're just meeting Liam in a new age.
Yeah,
because a new squad, he had his own episodes because he was stuck in a ship out in space. Yeah. And then the 3 of you had met each other. But Sai, I keep wanting to call Arak Basai. I'm so sorry, because it's that kind of large alien kind of character.
The heavy, yeah.
The heavy, yeah. um, I really like Sai, just her, because she's like the kind of diplomatic, like everyone, I guess she's kind of the leader in a way of like everyone looks to her to kind of, if they have to talk to someone and, because there's the command people or there's like the citizens of the town they were having to deal with that were possessed and like, and she's the one who kind of has this calm, like decision making. She's really great. But there's a lot of like, there's a lot of character stuff that happens between the characters, which is good too. I don't want to give too much away. Okay, 2 questions left. One is, can you just describe Marmaduke a little bit for your listeners?
Yeah, so Marmaduke is a so he's a war veteran, but he was so Prime are basically some segments of them are kind of designed to be, with their tech, designed to fulfill certain roles, and he was designed to be a pilot, and he is absolutely ecstatic about being a pilot. He loves being in the air and in space. He's not very good at not killing things. So if it's like we need to take these people in alive, he's a bit like, do we though?
Yeah.
Do we actually need to take them in alive, or can I just can I just shoot one of them in the leg? That's all right.
There's the voice.
Yeah, and so despite the voice, he's not very charming.
He's the most charming sounding person with low charm. Like,
yeah, he's not very charming. I think he's sort of too distracted by stuff, I think, to be fully charming. But he's very kind of he's very loyal to his squadron. And he sees Sai, Arak, and Liam now as his squadron. And he's like, okay, I'm loyal to these people. And and he's got a lot going on, because part of Reborn in Power is part of that universe is that there was a massive sort of interstellar event that happened and that wiped everyone's memory. And Marmaduke is an old fella, and his life, to a point, he just has no memory of it at all, as no one else does. But he has sort of, they're called fragments, where you get flashbacks of your memory before, and they can be volatile and they can be fatal. And he has them all the time, which is really, I'm just counting down the sessions until Marmaduke, he has a particularly bad one and his head pops or something.
Gosh.
But yeah, he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to play.
Is he the only one of the 4 that was born before the reset thing that happened? Or what is it called?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I don't actually know. I don't know for sure. I'm pretty sure, though. I think, yeah, he was the only one.
He's the one that has well, I mean, they all have, sometimes will be taken into vision, like Sai has had visions of her.
Yeah, Liam may have been. I actually, but Marmaduke hasn't asked Liam yet. So... And I haven't, because I'm quite method. Because Marmaduke didn't know Liam back in New Squad, I haven't listened to any of his episodes. So all I know of Liam is all Marmaduke knows of Liam.
Wow, that takes some discipline, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think you ever will listen to them?
At some point, yeah. I mean, it depends. If he gets into it, or if there's a point where he goes, I tell them, we stipulate to it, it's like, I tell them about everything that happened aboard the Solar Orbiter, I'll be
Mhm.
like, okay, well now I'm going to listen. Now I'm going to listen to them, and we're going to find out what's going on.
Liam is such a great character. He's extremely laid back, like kind of. I wouldn't say he's the comic relief. He's just kind of like the, you know, whatever. I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
everything's fine. Like last episode, he was making gnocchi. He's like, I'm gonna make some nokes, and
yeah.
like, you know, he just has these great lines that seem very natural.
Mm,
It's almost like, I mean, I don't know the person who plays him, but um, it just seems like you could see that as a person you're, you know, sitting next to at a party or something, and just having a, you know, um, definitely some comic moments that come out, and I like the banter kind of that happens outside of this, like when you guys banter or make a joke,
mm,
like out of character.
yeah.
There's plenty of opportunities for that. Um, like when, because Marmaduke gets possessed a couple of times. There's these
Yes.
characters called what are those guys called, that the guys that can control your mind, basically.
Yes.
Which I,
My mind is blanked on what they are, but they're
yeah,
like the greys. They're like small
they're
grey
these big
aliens, big heads.
heads. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been possessed. So Marmaduke has a big mustache. So the players were joking, like when he's possessed, like the mustache gets all frayed, and then
Yeah.
when he
all
comes
over
back
the
to
place.
himself, it's like all perfectly curled again or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Just
yeah,
yeah. And I'm fine
um,
now.
it's just a great. It's really fun to listen to you play that character because you use a different voice, and you know, that's a lot of fun. But the one question I did want to ask, and this might be a question for MSR Thadian more, and maybe Lee, who has created the Alchemy role-playing toolkit,
Yep.
which you may have helped, I don't know, but that's mostly Lee. But my question is, like, because you guys are creating entirely new role-playing games, like how much do you think they rely on players coming in who to already know how to play Dungeons and Dragons, or like how much thought has been given into bringing in people who are completely new to TTRPG, like, and how easily would that be?
So Alchemy, I can't speak. I mean, so Reborn in Power is a pretty robust system. It's not. It is fairly separate from D&D. It has its mechanics to it. It is quite like, it's like a fully fleshed out system in that set world, like D&D is. It's a fully kind of integrated system. It has all its little kind of intricacies, and it's set in that specific world. Alchemy is a bit different. Alchemy is more the thing with Alchemy, the point of that is to be adaptable to almost anything. So it can be kind of put into any setting, and it can be applied to any type of story. So really, I kind of think anybody could pick it up. It's specifically calibrated, and this is something I do as well, because I've been working on various sort of one-page RPG systems. So something that it's on a page, and you can just sit down with it, and everything you need is on this one sheet of A4, and you go, okay, I can now have like a role-playing session with this, right? It has its own sort of mechanics to it and stuff. And we consciously wanted to create a system, and this is something I do as well, where people are going to have the stuff you need on hand. So almost everybody has a deck of cards in their house somewhere. Even if you don't, it will cost you. You could probably buy like 2 packs for $1.
Mm-hmm.
And almost everybody has a six-sided dice in their house somewhere, lurking in a board game under the stairs or whatever, right? Whereas with D&D, you need specific dice with 20 sides, with 12 sides, with 10 sides. You need to be on a computer. Potentially, you need to have this character sheet that's 3 pages long. We wanted to really stream, and you need a big block of time as well, because it can take a while. And we wanted Alchemy to be a lot quicker, a lot more accessible, and a lot more versatile. And we wanted it to really focus on the story and collaborative storytelling, which D&D is really at its base, but it often kind of falls into the trap of being sort of a combat heavy war game type thing. Whereas Alchemy is very much story focused. And I think Reborn in Power has that element as well, of it being
character focused.
Yes, character focused, and yeah, even though it has its sort of combat system in it, and it works within itself, and it's very robust, and the character sheet's a bit bigger. It's it still works well for what it's intended.
But can someone who's never played a role-playing game before, like, how do you kind of expect people to kind of know how that all works before, or could like, how do you teach someone that, or is it there in the rules, like, that someone could just figure that out?
It's there in the rules. I mean, so it kind of depends on because there's usually 2 roles in these things. There's the person running it who has more plates to spin, and then there's the person playing it. And I think with Alchemy, picking it up and playing it is a lot easier than it would be in something like D&D, which is it's not for the faint of heart. I'll put it that way.
I think we had this conversation last time when I was on.
Yeah. Well, the thing with like the one pages as well, a one pager needs to be easy and brief to sort of get into. It needs to be clear. It needs to be easy to kind of get in, easy to understand, and it needs to be easy to pick up. So on the one page systems that I've made, I've got another one open in another tab that I'm kind of working on. It's a case of first of all, can I fit everything on one page? That's also a factor. And do I have to like shrink the font to minuscule size, or can it be like, is it legible, and does it cover everything that you might need?
What do you do with these one pagers?
Well, there are places where you can post them, like on Drive-Through RPG and things like that. At the moment, I've got a bunch of them, and they're all dog's tail is moving the curtain.
I can see. I knew the.
Yeah. He's nearby when this starts doing this. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm playtesting a bunch of them with Lee and Carl. The most robust so far, the most fun we've had so far, has been with one called Starfighters, which is like a space combat one. That's a bit more board gamey, I think, than RPG-ish. But there's elements. There's a lot of elements to it. Yeah, it needs. Yeah. I think there's something there potentially, but we'll see.
All right. I had another question about that, but I can't remember now. Oh man, I just lost my train of thought on that particular subject. Yeah, I had tried to listen to Critical Role a while back, and couldn't really get into it, but
Yeah.
for some reason I can get into definitely in the Reborn in Power campaign. I just got sucked into that more easily. Maybe because someone I knew was in it, but I think even like if I had started listening to it, I could have managed to get into it as well. Yeah, do we have a little bit of time left?
Yeah, I mean, well, I haven't been keeping track of time, so I don't know.
Is Archie demanding to go out or anything?
He is resting his head on my lap currently, which suggests he wants something. So I think we may have to wrap up.
Oh, usually when he comes in, that's the signal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been in the whole time though, so it's yeah. I just left him in the room. He hasn't booted open the door like he normally does, and come over and go, why haven't you come downstairs yet? So,
sounds like he's doing that right now.
He's doing that right now. Yeah, very much so. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe then we'll. I definitely had something that the discussion with James Craig made me think of, but we can do it at a different time if you want. So
cool.
Or now, or whenever.
That made you think. Okay. Did you have something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So hopefully this won't take too long because I know Archie's there. But when you were talking with James Craig in that episode, and you guys were talking about Star Wars, and he was like, Star Wars has always been flawed, and
yeah, he said it was always bad.
It was always bad. And I was like, those are fighting words. But then he was, and Star Wars there's no wheels in Star Wars and things like that.
There are wheels in Star Wars. He was wrong. The Hellfire, it was commented, the Hellfire droid is all wheels. Yeah. So there's at least 2 wheels in Star
think
Wars.
So. It's all wheels.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up the all the planets like have one ecosystem, like
yes,
the desert.
There is
planet,
that. Yes,
the forest planet.
Yeah, the snow planet.
Yeah. One thing that made me think of that actually was that I did think of when I saw the prequels, like the very first, and it kind of ties into something I'm struggling with in my own books. But like when you first meet Yoda, like in Empire and things, like he's this master Jedi, like totally, I would think of him as like an enlightened being, almost like all powerful and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In the prequels, like the Jedi, him and Mace Windu, like they're kind of effing things up as far as Anakin is concerned, and like they're like they're kind of fallible, is that the right word? More than you would expect for like a sort of all-knowing spiritual master type of person, especially the highest of the high council of that sort of thing. Because like the emperor is just playing all sorts of games with Anakin's ego, like they don't understand that you're so powerful, they don't respect you, and like so. And then on their side they're just like, Anakin, you're not ready, but they don't they don't really explain why or take a different angle, and like so. But I always thought, I was like, man, it's hard to make a like master type of character that and still have conflict in your story, because you have to that master has to screw up somewhere, or else they would just fix everything right away. Like in my books, this is a challenge with Amala Teeb, who is, when I first started writing her, I really based her on these like gurus I had read about, or it kind of met even in my travels, who are these Buddhist masters and everything, and like very well respected, very well loved. She is guided and trained and guided the mystics, and all that kind of stuff. But and so I was like, oh, she's the top of the top. But then in the story, she like there's she tries to fix what happens with Asta, because when Najat and Asta mind meld, it it almost destroys their minds, and like but then she Amala doesn't fix it all the way, and then you're like, well, how good is she then, like
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
well,
But
there's other elements as well with her, which would be which
I think
people
you
can
pointed out. Yeah.
yeah, there's other ways in which she's arguably made error. I think they're more understandable though, considering why they're made. But this is something as well that I kind of had a thought about with certain characters, Seraphine in particular, and in the Four Guardians series, and Rowan to a degree.
So these are two powerful mages. One is the grandfather, one's the granddaughter.
Yeah. And
their whole thing is kind of complicated. But go ahead.
Yes,
yeah, I want to see what you say about. Yeah.
She's sort of Seraphine is sort of positioned as, I mean, obviously not as old as Rowan, who is very old at that point, but she's in her 60s in Out the Ashes. And she's obviously she's wise, obviously she's lived a bit, but she's not infallible,
and I'm not sure she wants the peace.
Right. Well, that's another element to it, where you have the and she has her own reasons obviously for not wanting it, not wanting it. Yeah, it's tricky when you've got characters like that who are in the position of being the sort of wise, the wiser characters, the ones who are kind of showing the main characters the world. Giving them, I think it's important for them to be flawed, but then you can go, circling back around to Star Wars, you can go too far with it and you end up with Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, who is a shadow of his former self, and everything he's done has failed. Oh, you end up with Han Solo in the new trilogy, who goes from being this sort of kind of scoundrel, but he ends up being a general, and he rises up goes back to being a scoundrel, and he's a deadbeat dad, and he's doing in his 70s, he's doing the same thing that he was doing when he was in his 20s. And
it broke my heart what they did with both of those characters.
Yeah. I think with Han Solo, it hit harder later. It was less obvious, at least to me, what they did with Han Solo. But I think also that first sequel movie is such bait. It's giving you, it's so much nostalgia crammed into this. I mean, it's a long running time, but it's still so much nostalgia crammed in that it just makes things almost kind of whiz past. At least they did to me. But it's almost unwatchable now.
The first of the new one. Yeah. The second one is worse for me.
Yes. The second one. Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
And I haven't seen the third.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch the third one. I was like, no.
Okay. Luke was a big, because I was very interested in, when I was a kid, I would stare at rocks and try to make them move because of Yoda teaching Luke, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he was always my favorite character because he was like the spiritual one on the spiritual path, on the Jedi path, and just what he ended up as in the second one, right? The second one is or is it the third?
The second one is the one. Yeah.
Where he's a cranky old bastard, just oh man. like, why? This is my favorite character in the whole Star Wars universe. And yeah, in my books also, like Master Gujan on the island, like who's supposed to be this very and like one of the best masters. He's not as powerful as Dylan, but he had let Dylan do certain things, you know, when Najat was like, there's people on the island who are powerful, but they who are good and powerful, but they let things happen.
Yeah.
And so how do you explain that? What, you know, story wise, otherwise it's not going to be believable. So I kept running up against that, actually.
It's one of those that they have to have their reasons for doing it. It's like talking about it's almost talking about, it's in a similar vein to villains. Like, flawed characters are not necessarily villains, they're just flawed. But with a villain, they're always the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
What they're doing, they think what they're doing is the absolute best thing that they can do for X set of reasons. And they can be like sort of cartoonish reasons of, I'll take over the world and then I will enact my will upon the world and I will advance humanity in however way. Yeah,
like it reminds me of Vinnick, Lord Marshal Vinnick, and the Four Guardians series. And it took me a while to understand what his motivation. He pretty much spells it out in Empire.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, and maybe I'm even getting it right, I don't know. He's like, he feels like Kale has been downtrodden by countries like Moku.
Yeah.
In fact, doesn't Moku get their technology, magic tech from Kale?
Yes.
Like, and then but still disrespects Kale, and there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah. Well, there's reason. Yeah, but other countries have reasons to kind of maybe give Kale a bit of a wide berth,
but still use them.
But still use them for their tech, and also Moku have the same skeletons in the closet that Kale does. Well, not even in the closet; they're just out. The skeletons are out, but people are maybe with a bit of fear willing to deal with Moku, but not as willing to deal with Kale. And it's
I think it was interesting that his motivation turned out not to be just, I'm gonna take over the world. He is like what you said about, he thinks he's doing the right thing, is because he's very loyal to Kale. He's very, this is my country, we should rise above, I'm gonna bring us to the top. Yeah. Not just himself, but Kale.
Well, and Harma.
I think that's what I got. And well,
to a degree. I mean, Harma,
but not independent. Harma.
Yeah,
not independent.
Harma to be like a vassal, that he'll bring them both up. But Kale first. Kale mainly.
Yeah.
Harma as a result, but Kale mainly.
Yeah, so that was like, that to me is his like justification. It's not a personal, you know, but maybe he did want a bit of a legacy because his father and grandfather had certain legacies. But he just seemed very like country, like patriotic, I guess you could say, or I forgot the word for that. So, but he's doing terrible things to bring that about. But
yeah. Well, I think well, what we'll do, I think we'll bring it there. We'll pause ourselves there, and we'll.
Thanks for letting me slide in
have more.
Because I wanted to get your opinion on the whole flawed like master type of situation. So
I feel like we'll get into that. Well, I mean, I think this could be kind of a part one to that, because I imagine I'll be getting into that in the next one as well with Amaya Tenchi. So
let me ask you, first of all, when is Empire coming out? The Empire of Fire is the entire
so Empire is coming out. Okay, so it's definitely coming out this month. It's definitely coming out. Okay, I don't have a concrete date, but it's going to be out within the next 2 weeks.
And second question is, because I really enjoyed this series, 4 hefty books, but they are all one like complete package. But are you going to return to the world of planar? Did you have plans to? Do you have plans to?
Yeah, I'll return definitely. And I think those plans solidified upon completion of Empire. I think that's where I think I realized, there's definitely more going on in this world that can be told. One of the stories that I had planned, I kind of burned to make lore that went into the series within the books. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to move that in, and because it was just in kind of like rough form, just like a rough synopsis. And I went, I'm going to put this in. I'm going to put this in the series. It's Fire Spinner.
Fire Spinner.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk. Well, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. It's the tale of the first mage.
Oh yeah. The guy who created the Magus Towers.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I was considering not novelizing that. I will see about that. I kind of want to move forward a bit with the series, but we'll see. It's everything is in its sort of early stage. But yes, I'm definitely planning to return to plan art at some point.
I'm glad because there's just a lot of opportunity there, I think. Still, I mean, the story certainly wrapped up, but that's a pretty rich world. So, and there's countries that are talked about that aren't explored, and things like that. So, yeah, we didn't even talk about the Hitchcockian chapter and the like. There's so much. Well, like, I want other people to read it so that I can talk to someone else about it. Or
well, that's an Empire. We'll get there.
Yeah, there's just a great chapter that could almost be a short little story, and it's like if it's just, and it's told in a there's just some really fun things in this series that are unexpected but still work in the whole thing. So just to highly recommend it.
All right.
And congratulations on finishing it, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it
was like 10 years. A
long time in the making. Yeah, about 10 years. Yeah. So it's coming to a close, and it's an exciting time. But where can people find you, Leslie?
So mine's is one place, Leslee Sheu. I'm on Instagram, also Leslee Sheu. My website is lesliesheu.com, has information about the books. That's probably the best places. If you want information about the books, you can come here, and then if you just want to see what I'm up to as far as the books and stuff, Instagram or mine's is kind of my place to let my hair down a little. I do some book reviews as well. Trying to read indie books and do reviews for them and stuff like that. Reading a lot more indie books these days, and that's been really fun. So
all right. Well, you can find me also on Minds at Matt Waterhouse Author. You can find me on Substack. We looked at the Substack earlier, mattwaterhouse.substack.com. You can find me, you can find my The Four Guardians series here, shortly to be joined by a fourth, which is The Empire of Fire.
Yes.
And yes, it's going to be a good old time. All right, so thank you for coming back on, Leslie.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Indeed. and I'll see you all next time.